Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenzNet, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 interesting facts about the Amish.
Number 10. The Roots. The roots of the Amish religion are found in the Anabaptist movement, which was a splinter group that emerged during the Protestant Reformation in 1525. The Anabaptists are firm pacifists, and they strongly believe in the separation of church and state. However, the biggest difference between the Anabaptists and other Christian sects is that they perform adult baptisms. While this may seem like a minor difference to us, adult baptism was against the laws of Catholicism, and it was punishable by death. As a result, the Anabaptists faced terrible persecution, so the Anabaptists were forced to practice in secrecy. One of the earliest groups of Anabaptists was led by a former Catholic priest, Dutch-born Menno Simon, and his followers who would go on to be called Mennonites. Then in 1677, a Swiss man named Jacob Amann joined the Mennonites, and he eventually became the leader of the Swiss Mennonites. In 1693, Amann decided to shake things up a bit and introduced some new rules. Notably, he thought that men should stop trimming their beards and his congregation should stop wearing fashionable clothes. However, his most polarizing new rule was that excommunicated members should be shunned. If someone was kicked out of the church, they were essentially dead to everyone in the church, which is usually all their friends and family. His proclamations were controversial and it caused a schism in the religion. The people who followed Amann became the Amish. Over the next several centuries, the Amish continued to be persecuted in Europe. Then, in 1737, 21 Amish families came from the Netherlands and settled in Pennsylvania before expanding out to the rest of America. In 2012, there were Amish people living in 28 states and in Ontario in Canada. Number 9. The difference between Amish and Mennonite. There is often a lot of confusion about whether the Amish and the Mennonites practice the same religion, and if they don't, what is the difference? Well, in the prior entry, we mentioned that the Amish splintered off from the Mennonites in 1693. After the schism, the Mennonites continued to grow and expand, and there are about a dozen subgroups that can be divided into two different groups: plainclothes Mennonites and assimilated Mennonites. Assimilated Mennonites use technology, pursue higher education, and wear modern clothing. The plainclothes Mennonites can be split into two subgroups: those who use horses and buggies and those who use vehicles. Obviously, the horse and buggy Mennonites get confused with the Amish. Where they differ is that the men don't have beards and the women can have patterns on their dresses. They can also use modern technology like air travel and electricity, including television and the internet, although they may limit access. Another fundamental difference between the Amish and all Mennonites is their place of worship. The Amish meet to worship in the homes and barns of their followers, and the Mennonites have meeting houses. The final difference are their geography and the size of their populations. Mennonites came to North America in 1683, 10 years before the Amish splintered off. The first Mennonites settled Germantown, which eventually became a borough of Philadelphia. When it comes to the sizes of their congregation, there are many more Mennonite people in North America than Amish people, totaling about 800,000. Also, the Amish are only found in North America, whereas Mennonite communities are found in 51 different countries on 6 different continents. Number 8. Rumspringa. Clearly, the Amish life isn't for everyone. The Amish also know this, and this is why they give young adults, starting at the age of 16, a chance to experience the outside world in a period known as Rumspringa. The experience is more often undertaken by males than females, and during this time they are given more freedom from their parents. Also, since they are not yet baptized, they aren't under the rule of the church, and this gives them freedom from that rule. What young Amish people do while on Roomspring can vary. Some wear modern clothes, go to the movies, and drive cars. However, in some cases, Amish people on Roomspring party hard and get involved in sex, drugs, and alcohol. After experiencing the outside world, the young people have to choose if they want to be baptized. If they choose to be baptized, they will have to confess their sins, and after the baptism, they can get married. If someone chooses not to be baptized, they have to move out of the community, but they are not shunned like people who are excommunicated, and they can stay in contact with their Amish friends and family. This is because the Amish value that people choose to be baptized and want to dedicate their lives to their faith. Number 7. Amish music. While music is a celebrated art form in many religions, the Amish are not permitted to play instruments or listen to music unless it comes from their songbook called Ausbund. In the book, which is the oldest songbook still in continuous use, there are no musical notes. Instead, the tunes of the songs are passed down through generations. The reason why Amish aren't allowed to play instruments is because it's self-expression, and that could lead to feelings of pride and superiority. Yes, that may seem harsh, but if you've ever spent any time with a musician with a small amount of recognition, you'll know that the Amish are right about that. As for the themes of the songs, they are exactly what you would expect from simple living and hard-working people who were violently persecuted for centuries. It's all about sunshine, flowers, and rainbows. Oh, just kidding, it's about martyrdom and the hardships of persecution. Number 6. Faceless Dolls. The Amish aren't exactly known for being fun-loving people, however that doesn't mean Amish children have to go without toys. One of the most popular toys used by little Amish children are dolls that don't have faces. While there is no official story of where the Faceless Dolls come from, they manage to embody a lot of the tenets of the Amish religion. The first is that the Amish believe that everyone is equal in the eyes of God. Without an identity, the doll reinforces the notion that we are all the same to God. The second part comes from the book of Deuteronomy, which says, "Thou shalt not make thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath the earth." The Amish have interpreted this to mean that humans should not make objects that look like humans. However, without a face, the dolls aren't real representations of humans. Finally, the Amish will go to greater length to avoid sinning, and having a fancy doll would be a sign of vanity, where the plainness of the doll is a representation of the Amish's humility. Number 5. Pictures, or lack thereof. If you were invited to the home of an Amish family, besides the fact that they don't have a TV or any electronics, another thing you may notice is that there are no personal pictures, like wedding pictures or baby pictures. That is because pictures violate several tenets of their faith. First, they believe that pictures of people emphasize individuality, and the Amish believe that everyone is equal in the eyes of God. Secondly, an important rule is not to make graven images, and they believe that pictures violate that rule. Finally, Amish people want to be remembered for their contributions and the way they lived, rather than their physical appearance. However, it's important to clarify that it's not against their religion to appear in pictures, but it is against their religion to pose for a picture. So if you happen to be traveling in Amish country, which can be a tourist attraction, and you want to take some pictures, the Amish people would prefer not to be in them. However, if you have to take a picture of Amish people, ask if you can take their picture, but don't ask them to pose. Lastly, if possible, do take the picture so their faces aren't recognizable. Number 4. Relationship with technology. By far, what sets Amish people apart from many other people in society is that they do not embrace technology. The reason they do this isn't because they think it's evil, instead they worry that it will lead to assimilation with the rest of society, and being their own separate independent community is a tenet of the Amish faith. This is the reason they do not embrace any sort of mass media like television, pop music, and the internet. If they do use electricity, it is often propane, battery, or solar powered and does not come from public utility lines. For example, lights on their buggies that are powered by batteries that are charged with solar panels are perfectly acceptable. When the Amish determine if they will embrace a new technology, they first discuss if the community will use it. They do not automatically accept that new is always better, like many other people in society. Since they discuss it in their community, and there is no higher earthly governing body, like the Pope for the Catholic Church, technology use varies from subgroup to subgroup. For example, the most conservative group of the Old Order Amish, who mostly live in Holmes County, Ohio, have no modern luxuries, including indoor plumbing. On the other end of the spectrum, there is the Lancaster Amish, which is the biggest subgroup of the Old Order Amish. They have indoor plumbing, they use self-generated electricity, and also use pneumatic tools. But there are no biblical or religious reasons that prohibit the use of modern medical technologies, so what extent of medical care an Amish person wants to take advantage of usually depends on the family. Number 3. The Amish have higher rates of genetic disease. The Amish are a unique Christian subgroup because they do not try to attract new members. Yes, people do convert, but it's pretty rare. What's interesting is that while they do not get a lot of new members, the church's population doubles every generation. In the early 1900s, there were about 5,000 Amish people living in North America, but today there are 250,000. This happens because they have a retention rate of 80 to 90%, and then couples have 6 or 7 children. The problem with this system of population growth is that it creates a shallow genetic gene pool, and this creates a genetic bottleneck called founder's effect. When there is a bottleneck, genetic defects have a greater chance of being passed along to the next generation. In the Amish population, founder's effect increases the likelihood that Amish offspring will inherit rare genetic diseases. Some of these diseases are so rare that they don't even have names and can leave the person crippled. Other diseases that are known and that are common among the Amish are severe combined immunodeficiency, which is colloquially known as bubble boy disease. Cohen syndrome, a disease that affects muscle skills and mental development, and dwarfism also affect the Amish. One such person who was Amish and has a genetic disease caused by founder's effect is Vern Troyer, who is best known for being Mini-Me in the Austin Powers series. Sadly, genetic diseases are such a problem among the Amish that a special facility, the Clinic for Special Children, was opened in 1989 in Pennsylvania to treat and study the genetic diseases that affect the Amish community. Number 2. The Amish have lower rates of cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. While the Amish have a greater risk of getting genetic diseases, their lifestyle also does appear to have several health benefits because they have lower rates of cancer, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. There are several explanations for this. However, researchers believe the main reason is the lifestyle that the Amish live. Notably, tobacco and alcohol are prohibited. They also eat food that they grow themselves, so they eat very little, if any, processed foods. Also, their work is very active, so everyone gets plenty of exercise. As a result of their diet and the amount of physical activity they get, sometimes Amish people are overweight, but obesity is rare. The Amish also live in a rural setting, so they are further away from pollutants. Finally, while the Amish life isn't completely stress-free, people live and work in a very supportive community. This would lower overall stress, and when problems do happen, there is a large support network. Finally, it is possible that there is something in their genetics that helps lower the cancer rate, and research is currently being performed on Amish people's genetics that could have wide-reaching effects on the treatment of genetic diseases in the general population. Number 1. How can you become one? After reading all of this information, you may be thinking that the Amish life is great, and maybe you want to join the fight. If you do, what you need is time and dedication, and to get rid of whatever piece of technology that you're using to watch this video. First, you need to live in the Amish community for a year. Some Amish families will even allow potential converts to live with them for this year. During this time, new converts must attend a home worship service every Sunday and find a job working with the Amish people. They also have to learn to speak Pennsylvania Dutch, which is a variation of German. This is the language that is most commonly spoken in Amish households. In fact, children learn Pennsylvania Dutch first and then learn English when they attend school. After all that, and then the person is sure they still want to be Amish, they go through another period where they learn the ordinances of the church. Finally, the members of the church vote on the candidate, and if the vote is affirmed, the person becomes a full-fledged Amish. Obviously, due to the drastically different lifestyle from contemporary society, only several dozen non-Amish have joined the fight.
So I really hope you liked that video about the Amish, and if you did like this video, you might be interested to know that I host another channel, and on that channel, which is called Today I Found Out, we have a video which is all about why Amish men have beards but no moustaches. And if you're curious why that is, go over and check out that video, which I'm going to link to over there on the right, as well as a subscription button for that other channel. So if you like that video, do subscribe. It also puts out brand new videos 7 days a week, so go over there, check it out, and I'd love to know what you think. And thank you for watching.